Hi, Stuart from Bletchley, Porsche 911, Targa. As you know, I've been taking out these engine bolts. I've removed all of them. I've then proceeded to clean up all the holes. The best way that I found to clean the holes was to use some brake fluid cleaner, squirt it into the hole. I like to use a tool down into the bottom and scrape. Now there was some Loctite in there and it was really hard at the bottom. It was actually stopping the nuts. I was trying to use this nut to clean it out and it went in so far, and I marked it off with some yellow paint as to how far to go down. But when it went down it was locking out. So I thought, well, what seems to be the problem? So I had a look anyway. It turns out that when I was cleaning it out, the deposits that are left inside there, and here's a couple, which is like Loctite, which has gone like a really hard shell, almost like plastic. And this is either side of the thread, which is stopping you from winding it down. So anyway, I've gone through each one of these holes and I've cleaned that away from the thread. So then what I've done was I then used the bolt, wound that down into the holes, and as you can see that turns really freely now, all the way down. And when you look at every single drill hole, it looks like it has pretty much only just been drilled out, so they look pretty much brand new. So running this in and out a couple of times with some brake fluid, and when you put the brake fluid in and you wind it down, obviously that squirts up through the thread and you can see all the dirt and the muck coming out and spilling off down here, so you're wiping it away as you're going. So I got those clean. Then I thought, right, well, okay, now what do I need to do now? Well, I need to set the length of these studs. So I've gone online, the same as most people do, to find out what that height is. Some are saying it's 135, some are saying 133. I actually found, what have I done with it? I've got a document around here somewhere. Something misplaced it. Oh, here we go. So this one here was saying Carrera 993 13.25 minus 5. Anyway, 911 Carreras up to 1998 35.5 mil. But then was it 35.5 mil from that edge to the edge of the bottom of the cylinders where the cylinder bore sits, or is it from the top of that to where like the free bolts would sit, which is on the bottom of the case? So I thought, well, the best way is to probably just do a mock-up yourself. So I thought, right, well, okay, then that's what I'll do. So I've got the barrels and I put the original washer back on. I put one of the cylinders back on. I then put one of the barrels back on. And popped a washer down inside. So that's still got the gasket on it as well. So I put them all on. I then used my gauge to measure to see what was left. And I measured down. using the bottom part, the depth gauge, and then by just simply taking a ruler rather than just relying on the digital mark, because where you keep moving it around all the time, it might be out of fraction. So I've there got about 11 or 12 mil. So if I set that at that, what would happen is the nut, it's only threaded so far down, and if you're using one of these hexagon nuts, and if you're only using an Allen key, the further you wind it down, the further that comes out. Now if you're using one that's damaged like that, the further it comes out, the more chance it's going to slip. So obviously you need it to stay as far down in that barrel as you possibly can. So then I started getting out bits of paper and writing down and doing measurements, etc. So I did this, and this is one of the new bolts that I'm putting in. I'm not putting the original, what come out of here originally. I'm putting one of these. These are actually, the old ones, 164 length. These 163, so they're a millimetre smaller anyway. So if I put that on there, which is simulating the length of my bolt, if I did it 135, that means I've got 27 mil going into the hole. If I do it there, obviously it's going to be 30 mil going into the hole. Then if I measured from there to there, which is my cylinder barrel, that's about 83 mil. Then if I measured the distance which I have in there, which is about 33 mil, by the time I've got the washer, the 10 mil of thread that I've got, I'm actually over by about 3 mil. So basically that means that this bolt here, when it sits there, the actual thread will sit through there by about 3 mil, which is not also bad. So anyway, I continue to do my measurements. Basically this is what I come up with, which is pretty much what the book says. If you do it from there to the top of where the cylinder barrel would go on the inside, that works out to be 33. If I take it to the outside, when I measure that back up, I'm getting my 35. I forget what that says on there, zero that. So I'm getting a 35. So 135 mil. So then once again, take this one out. As you can see, that just screws out nicely now with my fingers. And another thing was as well, is when you try to take these out, if you do find that the heat and everything's not really working, if you get a bit of blue tack, pour a little bit of blue tack, put a little bit of blue tack around there, then get some nail varnish remover in it. Nail varnish remover, why is that? Because it's got acetone in it. The acetone will dissolve the Loctite. Now obviously, because that's pretty much flush, if you just pour that in, it just runs off everywhere. So if you make yourself like a little pond, a little seal around that, then pour that into there, that will fill up to there. Generally you'll find that it'll hold for the night, slowly going around the thread and dissolving it, which will make this a lot easier to remove the next day. As you know yourself by the video prior to that, I did use that, which was recommended by somebody else to me. It wasn't even a guy that does Porsches or anything like that, it was just a guy who's got a little workshop and he has used it before on other projects. So anyway, we've got all those cleaned out now. So now I can put this barrel onto here. Let me take that off a minute. Let's put the washer on first. That's another thing, because these ones, they are threaded all the way down. Of course, anything that you try and push down is going to catch, which is quite annoying. But there you go. So anyway, that one there will slip down over there. Take my cylinder again, pop that over there, and if I take my measurement once again, this is with the just the one new stud that I've put in. I'll take a measure there. On that one there, I've got 8mm, which is exactly the depth of the thread, because this is 16mm long. So when you take that, sorry, 18mm wrong, getting my measurements. So it's 18mm long, so it's 8 either side. Nine either side. So that measuring up now at 8mm, by the time you torque that down, it stretches up a little bit. It's got a couple of mil to go before it touches the Allen key that's going to be in there. So anyway, let's take that back off of there, because that is my depth that I've set, which is don't always trust these things, but okay, so to the barrel deck, all depending on whether you've had these resurfaced or or anything like that, obviously everything's going to sit from there, so that's going to deter the length of the bolt. I have now got 133, which is the right height, and that's from off of there. If I go back down to the deck there, it's going to be about 135. So anyway, I'm happy with that. I've done a little mock-up that I've tried the nut on it. I've wound the nut right the way down, and it all works out fine. So what I did was, when I was putting the new ones of these in, now obviously the bolt that I just took out of there just flies in and flies out. I can just wind that straight in and wind it out with my fingers. Obviously this, because it's got Loctite on it, it's not going to do that. And also because that's a tight seal, as you're pushing down on it and it's getting tighter and tighter, if you're trying to tighten it really quickly, you're getting air trapped in there, so you get an air pressure, and it's stopping you from putting that in. I mean, obviously being a builder, certain wood screws and that you get have a little line in them, so of course when you're doing them up, they let the wood glue out and let the pressure out the bottom, so you can screw down. Now obviously with engineering, they don't do that. So as you're screwing it down, it is going to be tighter, because it's airtight at the bottom. So anyway, let's put one of those in. Now I could struggle like that with my fingers and get it down as far as I can, but it's not worth it. So I just find that just putting a nut on there, put the original nut that you're going to use, once the whole thing's going back together, lock them off and just nice and gently wind that in. And like I say, there's going to be an element of air that's trapped in there. So if you're winding it slowly, hopefully you're allowing some of that to escape. Like I say, there's 24 of these, so I'm going to be doing the whole lot the same way that I'm doing here now. You know, I'm hardly putting any pressure on that, but I'm just winding that in nice and gently, making sure it's not cross-threading and it's going in what seems to be square as I can see it. Now the further down you go, obviously the tighter it's becoming, because you'll probably be finding that the air that's trapped in the bottom for that at the moment, it is compressing more and more and more. Now I don't know if that's a problem when the engine heats up, because hot air expands. So I'm hoping that this just leaks off on its own. So get to somewhere where you think you're somewhere near. Knock the nut off. And then just recheck it. So I'm going to do it from the bottom of the barrel deck. So that's on there. I've locked that off. I'm going to zero that because I'm not using it, because it's actually taking a measurement from there to there. It's not taking the measurement from there to there. So we'll switch that off. So that is 133. Right, so that needs to go down probably about another 6 mil. So lock it back off again. I know you see some of these videos and they play you hillbilly cowboy music, country and western, whatever it is, and they speed it all up and you don't really get to see what's going on. So hopefully with this one you get to see a little bit. So once you round it down again, take the nut back off. Now according to that, that's still about another 3 mil. So check this hasn't moved. And that's fine. So you can see how these jobs can notch up the pound notes, because if you're doing a job like this and it's notoriously slow, but you can't afford to do it at high speed. You know, if I've got an impact driver or something on that and just try to hammer it in with a power tool, it will go pear-shaped. That's remarkably close now. As I say, if you're a little bit unsure, the best thing is just do what I've done and just do a little mock-up. Put your gaskets and your barrels and put it all back together on there. have a measure for yourself. Then right, if you was to leave these too long, the worst scenario is when it comes to putting the barrel on, you just put a slightly thicker washer on the top, so when that goes down it's got a thicker washer there, so you get more of a bite on this, you get more thread to get so you can get your Allen key in there. Okay, I think that's there. That's touching there. And let's have a look at the old ruler. Okay. Right. Well, rather than bore you to tears by going through every single one of these, because as you know yourself, it's 24. I don't want to do the whole 24 on a video. It's not worth it. You don't gain nothing by it, and it just becomes really boring. So anyway, if that's been any kind of a help, once again, when the studs come out, gas, that tool there was a godsend. That's definitely the one to get. I've got other ones which are these. They weren't nearly as good. You know, they're still not rubbish. And that, which some people swear by, that just slipped. So get that. Get some nail varnish remover, because the acetone will start dissolving, and plenty of heat. That's the trick. And they'll come off easy. Just take your time winding them down. Just make sure they go in nice and level, square and straight, and you can't go wrong. Thanks for listening. If it's been any help, I'm Stuart from Bletchley, and this is Porsche 911 Targa.